C-Town Stand Up, we're back here at the lunch table, Seattle's #1 source for hip-hop news and discussion. I'm Caj Encee.
Yeah. Lately, girl, you been all up on my mind. And even though you fine and you sitting like a dime, it's unfortunate, girl, cause I ain't really got the time. I just like to kick it when it's dark and time to unwind. Chief of blunt for me, but for you, I got the wine. She drawing up contracts I don't wanna sign. Can't be focused on you, gotta be focused on mine. But lately, she wanna be my baby.
DJ.
They say what they say, don't care what they think, This ain't for play, I can't play it safe, I'm way too blessed, I can't complain, Switching them gears, never switch lanes, yeah. They say what they say, don't care what they think, I just want zeros like Westbrook, take that to the bank, I'm Mr. 1 through like 5, taking my place in the ranks, I just be feeling like Shaq, dancing straight with the ain't. Check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Look, same game with the same name, never lane change, no, yeah. Rain on my A game, trying to change things, whoa, right. No play, trying to maintain in my mainframe, whole play. This a
This is DJ Blake, and my next interview is the first Triple H Nast collab. I sit down with Seattle's own Caj Encee from the Lunch Table podcast. He's a great guy. We share similar views, and we're definitely going to continue to collaborate. I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, no nominees, so I never been nominated. Niggas spitting weak bars, I can barely tolerate it. Couple of blunts and couple shots, I'd say I'm kinda faded. Just broke up with my ex, I really love but kinda hate it. I had my dreams before this, but my body betrayed it. Can't do it like me, this shit cannot be replicated. Never picking up my dribble, hit you with the hesitation. Chris Angel all up in my blunt, feel like I'm levitating. I don't wanna be you niggas, I ain't never hating. If life's a bitch, well then nigga, I'm a penetrator. Every day I'm at this shit, that's what I call dedicated. Man, I got the sauce and I'm so well marinated.
Welcome back, everyone. This is DJ Blake, keeping you up to date with all the hottest hip-hop news and sneaker talk. And today I'm with a very special guest, the one and only Caj Encee from the one and only Lunch Table podcast.
What's going on?
And I wanted to start off this conversation talking about branding. So when I did some research on your podcast, I noticed that there's like 10 other The Lunch Table podcasts, you know?
Yeah.
So how'd you go about like deciding what your title was, or did you worry about if there was any other lunch tables out there, or?
Nah, and that's the funny thing. Like when I first I didn't get the podcast going till like a year after I birthed the idea of like, all right, I want to do a podcast.
Right.
And when I was thinking about it, really, I guess I'll just jump straight to it. The main thought was like, you know, when you're in school and it's like you get that break period and everybody's going to the commons, like you're going to lunch and it's like you sit at the lunch table. That's where like you get all your homies. You either got lunch one or you got lunch two, and like all your homies get together. You start, you know, you just talking about the day and stuff like that. That's really my main thought about it, and that's really where I got it from. I knew there's some other ones. I know there's one in like L.A.
Yeah,
that's actually the only other one I've seen. But I don't doubt it that there's some others.
Yeah. But you guys have an interesting podcast. What is, if you had to describe like the main focus for your specific podcast, what is like the goal for it?
The main focus is to shed spotlight on Seattle artistry, and not even just, I guess, as in a whole. Just, you know, really it's geared towards hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had other individuals on there who are not musical artists and stuff. So just building up the town as a whole. Like my whole thing is like, you know, I was just in Atlanta like this past week, and it's really like Black Hollywood out there. And so really that's kind of my vision for Seattle. Like I want people to know the artists that we have here. You know what I'm saying? Like before we started really getting going, you didn't see a very consistent week after week podcast putting the artists of Seattle who are up and coming like in front of a camera. You didn't really see their faces. You kind of, if you knew them, you knew them.
Exactly.
So that was really the whole focus.
And I'm starting to figure this out also, but how do you decide who you want to give a voice? Because everyone's important, you know, but like some people's music, you have to agree. It's just, you know, sometimes it's not even bad music. Some things you just don't want to support in a way, you know?
Right. Well, it's like I support everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not a fan of everybody.
Right.
And I really just choose. It's really whose music who I enjoy listening to. Like everybody any artist you've ever seen up there, I genuinely enjoy listening to their stuff. Like I would never, like, people reach out to us all the time, like, you know, how do we get an interview? How do we get a podcast? You know, like, people talking about, like, we'll pay you money to come up there and stuff like that. And it's like, it's not really about that, you know, like, and that's something I don't really want to compromise either, for our platform. You know, I just want it to be people that I'm genuinely interested in. So that's really the whole criteria for whoever I bring up there.
Right. So are you able to just say no, or do you, like, I don't know, because I want to help everyone. So if someone hits me up, my thing right now is if someone's hitting me up, then I'm going to set up an interview with them. But I'm picky about who I reach out to for interviews, you know? But, like, I don't string anyone along, but sometimes I have to push back in an interview. Like, if a big artist is in town and he's only in town for one day, I'm going to prioritize him versus someone who's going to be lives in Seattle, you know?
100%.
So how do you decide? Are you able to just say no to people, or do you kind of string them along? If that sounds bad, but
it's like I'm to be honest, I'm bad at saying no.
Yeah, see,
I'm bad at saying no. You know, luckily, I don't know. Like, I be bad, man. I'm not even gonna lie. I be bad. Sometimes I leave people on red. Sometimes, yeah, I'm not the best at it. And it's like, anybody out there who's reached out to us and you got left on red,
I'm sorry,
or whatever like that. Like, for real, I apologize, man. It's like, but that's just what it is, you know. Like, I genuinely gotta have people up there that, like, I truly like their stuff, and that's not to say that you can never be up there either. You know what I'm saying? You just keep working your craft. You know what I'm saying? Keep putting yourself out there and keep putting out a product that, you know, is eventually gonna gain traction.
Right.
And, you know, I take notice to it because we're tapped into the culture, we're tapped into the scene, and so we're always on the lookout.
Right.
Whether you were down and you were up, or whether you're up and we gotta go get you.
Yeah, I've done that too, man. Like, I live in Snohomish. You live in Edmonds, right?
Yeah, Terrace.
So both those places are deep, you know? So I've had to go to Tacoma to interview someone. And, like, I'm like, if they're passionate about what they're doing, and even if they don't have a car, I have a car. I have that resource. So I'm going to drive down and give them that voice.
100%.
You know? But it's crazy because at the end of the day, there's only a select few artists that end up actually making it big.
Right.
But if you look at it, everyone can shine. You know, there are going to be people who have a bigger impact than others. And what I like to say about the podcast, for anyone who's doing a podcast in Seattle, if you're focused on artists, there's millions of people in Seattle. Yeah. So there's, like, honestly, if there's not millions of artists, there's at least hundreds of thousands of artists, you know? So, like,
for sure.
Of course, it's cool that one artist that one podcast might know might end up on another podcast, but there's a huge chance one podcast might not even know an artist that you're interviewing.
Right.
So there's such a big group of people, you know?
Yeah.
But
I think what's huge for the city right now is really building up our scene. Like, last year, I think it was like probably the largest steps we've ever taken, and it's probably the most artists you've really seen take off from the Seattle Tacoma area all at once. You know what I mean? Like Travis Thompson, Louis being one of them, Paris Alexa, Laze, all those people, like, kind of gained momentum at a similar time. And so as a scene and as a culture, it's like our job to keep cultivating that and keep people tapped in and tuned into that. So I think that's like the biggest thing that is critical for the town.
Why do you not think there's a few podcasts that focus on artists, but it's more recently also, you know? Why do you think it hasn't been a thing for a while, like the podcasting scene in Seattle?
I can't really say, man. I can't really say. I have no clue, and that's why I needed to jump into it. That's why I had such a huge, like, gut feeling to, like, make that happen.
Yeah.
Because it was such a absence. It was such a, like, missing piece that our city needed. So I can't really speak to it. You know, like, I wish. Definitely thankful for you know, individuals like yourself who are part of the stations and who are tapped in. I know Cube is trying to make a concerted effort, and then so it's just got to keep building on top of each other. But, you know, it's here now, and it's building. You know, there's multiple podcasts going on now, and that's the whole point. Like, hopefully I was some inspiration to, like, some of these other ones that came around. The Lunch Table was some inspiration because you know, they're popping up more, and you know, more people are getting a voice, more people are getting some FaceTime.
Mm-hmm. And I like to say, because jealousy is not going to help anyone, you know? So
Never does.
at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I don't even really like, especially when it comes to Seattle, because it's your city. I don't want to say there's like competition in Seattle either. So what I'm doing is like, okay, there's other podcasts. I'm not going to be jealous that they're having this guest or that they even exist. So why don't I just collab with them? You know, it just
Right.
makes it easier. Just befriend them. You know,
Yeah.
And that's what this is. It's the first step, I think. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
But I want to know, how do you we said branding, like the name, but how do you brand yourself as like an impact in Seattle where people start to recognize you? Like, how'd that come about?
I think your credibility of who you bring up there is a big part.
See, that's the thing that gets like confusing though, because credibility comes down to the artist too, and you don't want to you want to help everyone, but some artists may make you lose credibility.
Right. Yeah. I mean, luckily the people who I'm genuinely interested in the people whose music I do like are people who other people like as
Mhm.
well. That's really the big. I think I can't really speak to the other parts of the pie for like branding and like credibility and stuff like that, but yeah, I think the people that you bring up there, it's like, because if you bring up a bunch of people who are not familiar with, then you know they might not tap in. But if you got Drake on your podcast, you'd be like, oh snap, you got Drake up there. Who else have you brought up? Who else are they gonna bring up?
Drake,
Right?
Drake.
Yeah.
But how'd you get Paris Alexa? Like, that's one that she's like a legend right now. Like, people are like, oh, I saw her there. Oh wait, nope, that wasn't her. That's her. That's her. You know, like, it's difficult to actually like locate her sometimes.
Yeah, she's a real cool individual. I really just reached out to her. I just DM'd her on Instagram. That's how I really reached out to like most of the artists that you've seen on the lunch table. I just DM'd her. I got in contact with her management as well.
Right.
It was kind of like a combo because her management, I don't know if it is now, but her management is actually out of town.
Oh, wow.
They're not based in Seattle as far as I last knew.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she was just kind of like a main contact. She's real personable. She's real down to earth.
Yeah.
She's a real cool individual. So she was not like, you know, she wasn't like too big for the moment or anything like that. So yeah, it was really simple, straightforward for really everyone that I reached out to.
Right. Comes down to credibility also, you know, which is a huge thing. But you're not just only like a podcaster, you also make music yourself, you know?
I do.
So which platform do you try to push more?
On like
for a bigger audience, like, do you think that you have more of a voice on your podcast or more of a voice through your music?
Right now, because I've been slow to release,
Mm-hmm.
and I put so much effort into the lunch table over 2019, I think right now I have a larger voice on the lunch table.
Mm-hmm.
And being with Respect My Region, you know, we're one of the most noted blogs in the area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone really comes to us for, you know, for press write-ups and stuff like that. You know, they're always trying to partner up with us, and so but I think Instagram is huge.
Oh God, social media is huge.
Social media is huge. Twitter is huge. Definitely want to build my voice more on Twitter, but yeah, that was like a focus of mine too. When I started Lunch Table, it was like, I'm not releasing music right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I still want to be seen. I still want to be heard and let people know that I'm here and a part of the culture.
Right.
And so it really all worked out pretty perfectly.
Mm-hmm. How do you pitch a podcast to someone? Because like, when you look at the statistics of who actually listens to regular podcasts, if it's not like hip hop or something, it's older people who are on their way to work or waking up in the mornings, things like that. So how do you pitch a podcast to a younger individual to make them listen to it?
You've gotta have some content that they want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the people that we've had guested up there, you know, it's a part of the crowd that's up and coming.
Right.
And like the Seattle scene is so hungry right now, that they want to be tapped in. That's that's the beauty of it.
That is the beauty.
They want to be tapped in, and they want to be a part of it too. So you know, that's why they're reaching out to you. That's why they're reaching out to me.
Yeah.
They really want to be included in the come up, in the building of what we got going on.
Right.
So it's like it's kind of easy just being in this space of music and hip hop and and being in this city of Seattle, it's like it makes it all easier because everyone's so hungry out here right now.
For sure, How do you pay attention to other podcasts like outside of Seattle, like Joe Rogan, The Breakfast Club, anything like that? And when I say that, when I was interviewing Louis like a few weeks ago, he was saying, "Oh, I don't really focus on the podcast itself or the radio station. It's focused on the artist, But you're an artist and a podcaster, so when you look at interviews, do you focus on the artist or the podcast, or is it a mix of both?"
It's definitely a mix of both.
Right.
Like when I first got started looking at The Breakfast Club, because like they're the premier interviewers to me, in my opinion, for any artist, for most hip hop artists. So yeah, definitely trying to just emulate what they were doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're fresh, you sorting the blueprint, for how you want to move. So definitely looking up to them. Definitely pay attention to Joe Budden, even Joe Rogan sometimes.
Yeah.
They all have a different little bit aesthetic, and like not one is right, not one is wrong, because you could have Joe Rogan where it's like a black room and it's super simple, straightforward, and then you've seen all of them. They're all a little bit different, but I definitely pay attention to both. How to try to conduct yourself as an artist,
Right.
How to stay composed and all those things.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think podcasting has like switched over to YouTube more? Because when it started out, it definitely was just on the app, just audio. But now it's more, because I'm not having problems with it. I'm just starting to look into the video part of it because I see that's a big thing, and everyone's like, "Oh, can we find you on YouTube?" Yeah, the audio. They're like, "Oh, what about the video?" I was like, "Oh, I guess that's a thing,"
Yeah, I mean, people are like, our generation is so like quick to lose attention. So it's like them just hearing something, just them just auditorily listening is like it's sometimes not always enough. Like we're probably the age group that is on their phone the most. So we're looking at a screen.
Yeah.
So they want to be able to look at something. That's why I think there's probably been such a big shift towards because when you think of podcasting, it was like audio at first, but now it's like it's both. It's equally just as much as both. But that's why I think it's shifted more towards the video, because people need to be captivated. They need to be looking at something the whole time.
Exactly. How do you make your podcast? Like, again, I don't like to say there's any competition, but how do you make your podcast stand out compared to other podcasts?
I think through just the Instagram is probably where a lot of the focus is at.
The clips.
Yeah, the small 1 minute, 30-second clips. I think that's where we try to stand out the most. I haven't really seen. That's definitely a blueprint, but it's not a blueprint that I've seen really too much around Seattle. So that's kind of like what I've tried to make the focus. It's like, here's a quick piece of content, because sometimes when you get a 30-second clip and then you really love that 30-second clip,
you go to the whole thing.
You want to go to the rest of the thing, and so that just drives it to your page, drives it to more of your other interviews and stuff like that. That's
And how do you prepare for podcasts? For me, like, I do research and stuff, but I kind of try to stay, and everyone has a different blueprint, So it's definitely not wrong for one person to use notes and other person not to. But for me, what I do, I'd research the person. Or sometimes, I'm just going to be honest with you. Sometimes, if it's like a last minute interview that just got set up, I will do no research whatsoever. And then that makes it even more fluid, because then you're literally learning about that person at that very moment.
Right. For me, I'm like, I try to be super prepped. I try to be super prepared. I'm definitely a note taker.
Right.
Getting ready before each week. I'm definitely a researcher. I think like as we bring guests back, it'll be easier to have a conversation with them about what they're doing, what they're up to next, and trying to kind of just have that free flowiness that's more enjoyable for the people inside the interview and the people watching it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely like, for that first interview, I'm trying to do my research and be knowledgeable about that person.
How do you keep it from sounding like scripted and make it still interesting? Because some podcasts, like my goal, because I do love The Breakfast Club, but for some reason I've just been really attached to Joe Rogan. And especially because he almost releases like every day, even on the weekends. And his podcasts literally range. You will not find an hour-long podcast on Joe Rogan anymore. They're easily 2 hours to 5 hours. Easily, like if you go on Wikipedia even, 2 to 5 hours plus, So my goal is to keep it like entertaining for that long time, because that's when the real like art form comes in,
Yeah. For me, it's like I feel like I ask pretty in-depth questions that should draw out, pretty good response.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough sometimes when you get someone that you're interviewing and like they
Or
don't
brick wall.
right, yeah, they don't talk a lot. I would say our best interviews on the lunch table have been obviously with the most outgoing people.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we're laughing the most.
Yeah.
That's when we're cracking jokes the most, having the best time.
Yeah.
Drinking on the set.
Yeah.
Smoking right before we come in there.
Yeah.
Those are the best ones.
Mm.
But when like they don't give you much, and you got to hop to the next question, that's when it sounds super scripted.
Yeah. Dude, I've had podcast interviews where the person is super excited and they're excited during the interview and they'll answer like one word answers, but they're smiling the whole fucking time like they're having the best time of their life. I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do here? I'm asking them questions. They're excited for it. It's not like they're trying to be like shy or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, how the fuck do I deal with this, So like people don't realize, but even interviewing is an art form,
100%.
Sometimes I feel like when it comes to like news interviews or like, more when it comes to like news interviews, like when it's like a big author or something, and then they like the news station needs someone to go report that. I feel like that kind of gets scripted and it kind of loses the fact of authenticity, especially with like weatherman even, because like they're all supposed to sound the same, they're all supposed to look alike. So at the end of the day, you have no idea who the fuck that weatherman is.
Right.
You just know that he's giving you the weather.
Right. He's just giving you the content.
But podcasting is a whole different animal, and the audience comes from you being personable yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like people, for me at least, I think it's always good to have a good artist. But that's one reason why I really like the Joe Rogan experience, is because a lot of these people, like he does throw in people actually know, but at the end of the day, he'll interview people that have influence, but people you have never heard of.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it comes down to Joe Rogan knowing what he's talking about.
Right.
And you guys are different because you guys focus on, you're a 3 mic set, right?
Mm-hmm.
What made you decide?
Sometimes 4 with my guy right here.
Oh yeah, 4.
He's on production.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's on production and he's having a conversation with us at the same time.
Yeah, that's dope. What made you decide to be like more than just one guy interviewing person?
I feel like just straight out the gate, it's hard to carry a show.
Yeah,
on your own.
Mm-hmm.
That's like I did it for 2 episodes, and cause like they wasn't like before he was on with us. I mean, this has been my homie since way back, but before Feez was on with us and before Mitch bought into the idea of doing the lunch table, I was like, all right, man, I gotta get this off the ground. I gotta do this on my own. Get the pilot off and get a couple episodes off like that. That's tough. Like. And I came in there with a script too, because I was like, how am I going to keep this going? I don't want to have a 12-minute episode.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have a 13, 14-minute episode. I want to at least make this 20 minutes. To me, that doesn't make a good episode, whether it's 12 minutes or 20 minutes. I mean, I guess it could sometimes, but in my eyes when I first started, that's kind of what it was.
Makes sense.
So I was like, man, I need some other people to help,
Mm-hmm.
Bring this conversation in. And it helps to have people that know what they're talking about too.
Right.
So yeah, that's really why I chose to bring on the people that are all with me now.
I've been doing a good job of figuring this out, but what do you do to know when it's time to wrap up an interview?
Really, I'll talk all day with an artist who wants to talk all day.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're like that brick wall, I mean, it's over once I get to my last question.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so true.
Yeah. But like I've had, I come in with no matter who the artist is, I come in with my set of questions, and if they love talking, it's like we got 3, 4, and 5, 6 questions, not off topic, but just added into the interview before we circle back around to like the order that I was in, and those are the best ones.
Yes, for
those
sure.
are the best interviews.
What have you learned about your music through your doing interviews, because like even when I'm doing interviews for just interviews, I think we're in a decade where everyone thinks they can be an artist. So I think I'm really proud to say that I cannot carry a note, because some people can't say that. They think they can and they can't. But basically I think interviewing people has actually matured me a lot, you know? So for someone who does interviews but also is an artist, how has that shaped your music? And has it at all?
Nah, it's never really.
Huh.
They're really two separate art forms for me.
Makes sense.
As much as I want the world to hear my music, like I make my music for myself.
Right.
Like for sure. Like when I hear a mix and mastered record that like I just did, it's like it's kind of surreal when I hear it because I'm like, I know it's me, but I'm like, damn, this person is talking about exactly what I want to hear right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like my music artistry is so much for me, and you know, after that it's for anybody that can connect to it. Whereas like, you know, the podcasting and the interviewing, I want to be able to deliver that content for people to enjoy.
Right.
So I guess the big difference is that the podcasting and the interviewing is for people to enjoy first, and with my music, it's for people to enjoy second.
Gotcha. Okay. That's fair. That's actually really fair.
Yeah.
What do you get out of podcasting? Like,
it gives me a chance to know the people that are part of the culture,
mm-hmm.
and tap in with them and just connect with them on a person to person level. You know, like sometimes if you never see a person, you know, if you never met a Drake or a Travis Scott, they're just so huge to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But a lot of things that you hear from maybe person who's way beneath them, like when they meet these people, they're like, oh man, they were so down to earth. You know what I mean? They were so cool. You know, they were showing me a good time. And it's like, that's what I want to have with these people. With like everybody who's been a guest up there, it's like, I want to be able to get to know them on a person-to-person level.
I think definitely some people have more of an influence than others. But I think we need to stay away from putting people like on a pedestal and thinking Drake is a god or like Kanye is a god, people like that. Because they are, like, I love both those guys' music, but at the end of the day, they are just people.
Right.
But why do you think fans kind of put them in that box where they're like, oh shit, Drake is way better than me. I'm just this little guy who's working in a cubicle and Drake's out here making bangers.
Probably just because they're able to live such a way more extravagant lifestyle than we're able to. So we're like, damn, they have so much access to travel the world, and they got all this jewelry on, or they got so many women, or like, you know, all these things that everyday people are like don't have. So I think people, and those are things that people want to do. You know, they want to have the money, the cars, the house, be able to travel and do all that. So it's like somehow, some way, that's been the prized possession for like where a lot of people want to be.
Yeah.
And like when they see people in that position, it's like, damn, there's so much. They're really doing something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's weird because when they're little, they think $1 million is crazy, you know? But once you start to grow up, you realize that, like,
that's gonna get you that's gonna get you less than 10 years.
Yeah, but 80,000 when it comes to like normal people working, 80 to 100,000, you're doing something right, which is really weird. It's just how like the media portrays people of influence. Because to actually reach that level is really hard, and it just comes down to connecting with people, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
How do you connect with your artists? Like, do you make sure you like link with them afterwards, or once you interview that artist, boom, the episode's done next to the next artist?
Nah, and that's what helps with me being genuinely fans of their music, because I stay tapped in with them.
Right.
Like if I was to bring up someone who paid me for an interview to come up there, like I'm probably not gonna be too interested in what you're doing after that. You know, just keeping it real. That's a huge benefit of being genuinely interested of all the people that I met. So I go to their shows, you know, like that's how I've done features with 3 of the artists who I've had up there.
Yeah, that's dope.
So like after that, we're working on music and stuff together. Like that's how I got linked in with like the person who's my main engineer who mix and masters all my stuff now. So it's like I definitely try to keep the connection going as much as possible.
What I've learned through interviews is that, well, a new mindset I've gotten is that, like, because as an interview, you do start to realize, especially when you first start out, that these artists are just people, you know? So before doing interviews and going to concerts, I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. This is crazy. This is so fun. But now when I go to concerts, it's more like a job in a way for me. I feel like
It is.
it's for me to see what this artist is doing, what he's doing bad, maybe give that guy some advice. And like I don't fanboy out when I go to concerts anymore. It's really weird. It kind of loses like the magicalness, if that's a word, you know?
Yeah.
Especially because think about it, like I easily spent like in 1 month like $300, which is a lot to me for a concert, for something that's only like 4 hours, $300. That's a lot. And now I look and I was like, that's easy. This guy's amazing. Of course I'm gonna pay $300 to see this guy. Now I'm like $300 to see this artist when I could just interview this guy or something like that. Why would I do that?
It's definitely like, I mean, I think on a local level, it's definitely like a job.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not only going to go see the artist, like you're going to go network at the same time.
Networking turns such into a job.
That's a job. That's a 24-hour job if you want it to be.
Yeah. Social media is a job now.
It is, truly. Kind of to piggyback off what you're saying, it loses its luster a little bit after you know them and have gotten tapped in with them, but the same in a different area where it kind of loses its luster, it kind of brings it up in a different area because it's like, oh, I know that person now.
Yeah.
So it's like, cool. Like now you're no longer like a bystander. Now you're an acquaintance or a friend. You know what I'm saying, or a coworker or whatever. At that point.
Yeah, it's so exciting. That is the exciting part. You know, who do you focus on interviewing? Do you focus on people who already have a voice, or people that are up and coming, or?
It's always a thin line to straddle. I think I did a pretty good job of bringing up people who did have some notoriety, but as I said, you never saw their face on camera.
Right.
Not one person that I brought up on the lunch table, you never saw their face
before
anywhere else before the lunch table. So I think that was pretty pioneering. But yeah, I think the bottom line is just it's a tough line to straddle. Because on the left side of the line, everybody loves being the first to a song. Everybody loves being the first to an artist. Like, check out this person on SoundCloud. Like, well, you still on SoundCloud? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm on SoundCloud. But then you also don't want to lose credibility at the same time.
That's true. Why do you think no one? Maybe I'm wrong, but from what I've seen, I don't think anyone's had Macklemore on their podcast. Do you see that?
I don't think I've ever seen Mac on. I mean, I think maybe he's been up at Cube or something. I mean, shoot, Mac, if you listening, man, come up to the lunch table, man. I'd love to talk to Mac.
Why do you think he does that though? Like, do you think, like, when I talk to artists about him, they either love him or hate him, and the people that really usually love him are the people that were part of Totem Star or Residency or any of those programs that helped give them more of a popularity or influence. Like, because Macklemore is like the face of the Residency, so he doesn't come into like every single like studio time session or whatever, but he's there enough where people are like, oh yeah, I know Macklemore now. You know? But like, what are your opinions on him? We're not going to trash talk him right now or anything like that.
I don't even got nothing bad to say about Mac. I think what I will say, I think the most left thing I would say about him is that I don't understand why he's taken the position he has, like, because it doesn't really seem like outside of a few artists, and maybe those are the ones he feels are deserving.
It's kind of weird though.
Yeah, I mean, I would think he would be doing a little bit more to try to foster the entire Seattle culture with, you know, he's got a Grammy on his plate. You know? So it's like you have a lot of power and a lot of influence to be able to put some people in positions, and he's definitely done that with Travis Thompson, which is, you know, has controversy in itself, you know, just for like, you know, he's white and Travis is like native and white, you know, but, you know, he passes as white, you know, so it's like, oh, you're only going to help put on, you know, white rappers or like people that like maybe are that audience will listen to.
Are you saying Little Mosey counts as white?
Nah,
Dude,
no.
that guy-
Mosey extra light skin, but Mosey didn't get put on by Mac.
I know, but like, he's probably gonna see him at the sessions this weekend or something.
But
You know?
I mean, but when you go to these concerts these days, that's really who's in the crowd.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of white kids in the crowd.
I know,
Um,
dude. I was interviewing this guy who's like, he's all about his like knowing his roots. He's black. He's raised in a black family, black church, everything like that. He's like, I'm gonna keep it straight with you. The majority of my audience are white kids, and I'm fine with that because that's where my influence is being held at. You know, it's you gotta appreciate your audience. You know, no matter how big or small, it's a good thing to notice. Like, I don't know. I don't ever want to. Everyone says they don't want to like get lost in the sauce or the money or anything, but I think that's that's probably something you have to think about every single day in a way. You know, to not think you're better than someone. Because I think at the end of the day, if you're driving around in like a Rolls Royce and you're next to someone in a beat up Toyota Camry, you're going to think you're better than them, but you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that comes down to your support system and who you surround yourself with. You know? What made you decide to surround yourself with those two other mics? And what's your name again? My bad. What made you decide to surround yourself with them when you started up this podcast?
I mean, pretty much exactly what you were saying right there. These is all humble individuals. Feez, like when I got introduced to him, he was just like, "Man, I love what you're doing. Would love to be a part of that."
Right.
So and he's a great personality, and so you know, really it was just no brainers because I hate people that are got egos that are too big. You know what I mean? And that doesn't exist on our crew.
Right, that's good.
And so it makes it easier to work with everybody.
What do you think, including you and every other mic that's on your podcast, what do you think do you guys each individually bring to the table for your podcast?
I think I bring the super journalistic approach. I think I bring like the in-depth questions. And we all bring something to the table that the other doesn't. So I think I bring that to the table. I think Mitch brings like a lot of a good amount of industry knowledge. He's worked with artists. He's managed artists before. He's been building up Respect My Region for a long time, and had so many people reach out to him, whether they be promoters and as well as artists. So he's got that front end. Feez is an artist himself who's lived in other cities. He's from Chicago. He's lived in Chicago and he's transitioned over here, so he's seen what a scene like Chicago and what that has to offer, and can offer that view and that angle, and give his opinions on things like that over here. And and he's a super passionate individual as well. So like, he's kind of like the more hyped up one on the mic, and we each got different personality. Like it probably goes like Feez is the most hyped up, then it's probably me, then it's probably Mitch.
That's good though. I think for me, I think it's easier for me to be on my own because I have focused so much on hip hop to the point like it's unhealthy. The first thing when I wake up in the morning is going like hip hop blog store, hot new hip hop, anything like that. like when it comes down to it, I'm listening to music. No, I listen to podcasts alone. Like when it comes down to it, like 8 hours a day, I'm listening to straight podcasts, and then for 4 hours, it's like music. So I think, does it get difficult for you to work with other people, even though you're friends? Like what I realized too, and I think it also comes down to like learning if this person is actually meant to be in your life or not. If you end up having like partners or something, like relationship or friendships, if you're with them every single day, you might start like not realizing what you don't like about them versus if you're with that person you really like maybe twice a week, So do you ever feel like it's rough working with two other mics, 3 sometimes? Or is it always just something you're comfortable with? You're like, this is a highlight coming here, seeing these guys.
Yeah, it's definitely a highlight. Love these guys. Yeah, that's exactly why I brought them on.
Right.
I look forward to it every week. We shoot on Sundays. We put it out on Monday.
Yeah, it's dope.
but yeah, that's never like I don't get tired of it
Mm-hmm.
ever. Because like I was saying before, it's like I can't really imagine going back to carrying the show by myself.
Right.
Those was by far the toughest
Yeah.
episodes.
Do you guys even focus, like some people don't really focus on that, and like even when it comes to like a collective, a good collective, in my opinion, are people like everyone's equal. Sometimes it's good to have a leader, but when it comes down to it, everyone should feel like they're equal. But for your podcast, do you think of yourself as like the first mic, or do you guys kind of try to stay away from different mics?
I think it's naturally just kind of fell into, cause like I'm such a prepper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm such like I was saying, I take such the journalistic approach that like I kind of have control over the way the route of the interview is gonna go. But
Mm-hmm.
that's never to say like, no one is cut off. Like everyone is free to do exactly what they want to do. We be cutting each other off, or
Right.
it doesn't matter.
Right.
So in my eyes, we're all equal. But I think just as far as like the flow of the show goes, it tends to be more focused on
The creator,
I guess my mic. You know what I mean? Just because I have the most questions, I just naturally I think it goes that way.
That makes sense. And you guys record at Rainier Avenue Radio, right?
Yeah, that's where we were at all of last year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's been a fruitful space for us.
Right. How did you make that connection? Like that's what I think is really good when you can make like I don't know if you have to pay to be there or anything like that, but I think it's really, which has been successful for me, is finding these like really, really worthwhile connections where everyone feels equal, but they have something that's really beneficial for you, and then you have something really beneficial for them. Like I've been able to find spaces like the radio station, my downtown Seattle studio, which are basically if super very inexpensive or free, And I think when it comes to podcasts, I think podcasts in a way are even harder to get off the ground than music, because it's so long. Like, who the fuck's gonna listen to this guy's opinion? I don't know who this guy is.
Right.
Versus if it's a catchy song, that can blow up instantly. But a podcast, like you could literally have Jay-Z. I use this example so much because Jay-Z is like the epitome of rap for me, in my opinion. You could have Jay-Z on for an hour. And if it's a shit interview, you can still get maybe 3,000 views, Yeah. Because there's those diehard fans.
Right.
But I think that building these really important connections with studios and venues are really important. So how did you form that connection with Rainier Avenue?
It was like Mitch and one of the other founders of the blog, Joey, they really kind of plugged it in, and just as far as the whole vision, they really saw a value in what Respect My Region brings. And before we were in Rainier Avenue, we were shooting in my work.
Right.
We were shooting at like where I work at in like a main office. So it was like really grinding. Like we didn't have that connection before, and so after they saw like what we was doing to keep it consistent, we're out every single week. They saw the value in that, and they wanted to bring it to their platform, and so we kind of share. That's the trade-off, like we get to be in there, but we're gonna funnel it through their platform, and that's really how it really got off the ground from there.
Right. How much editing do you guys do? Because if you record on Sunday and putting it out on Monday, do you kind of try to keep most things in your interview, or?
Yeah, I try to keep it all in there.
Yeah.
I don't try. I do.
Yeah.
I do keep it all in there. It's quite a bit of editing. Definitely takes up a whole afternoon. Even and up until the morning. And I got to bring it to work with me sometimes, and like duck off into an office real quick and like finish up the clips, or finish uploading it to YouTube, or I got to send it to Mitch, make sure he gets it uploaded to Facebook, up on the RMR site. So it's quite a bit. It carries over into the regular work week for sure.
For sure. Are you able to connect your work to your podcast and your music at all, or is it completely different from what you?
Yeah. Not my work is not connected to my music, but my work is definitely connected to podcasting. Like I'm in sales, so it's like I got to be able to have conversations with people. I got to be able to keep conversations going and keep people interested in what I'm talking about or what I'm trying to offer to them.
I think it's important to highlight that too, that like for me, for you, like genuine artists who realize, well, no, I think it's weird. You can't really generalize it for artists, but I think it's important to highlight that if you are doing this, like if you're in music at all, until you actually take off, you can even have like 50,000 views, and that's still not enough. You have to really be in a place where you can switch over your day job to your podcasting or your music. And what are your opinions on people who stay away from work altogether and just focus on their music?
Man, that's highly commendable. Truly. I mean, if you're not bringing in no funds, it's like you got to have funds to be able to put behind your music, whether it's studio time, you're booking studio time, you got to pay the engineer. You got to put marketing behind your music. If you want ads to go up on social media, if it's not uncommon. Like you gotta pay to play to get on spins on the radio.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if you somehow have a way to be able to not work and do all of those things, then like, man, I commend you. Hat off to you, man.
Right.
Or women. But like for me, I'm not there yet, and like I'm fortunate that I have a
space in general.
That I just have, that I have a good job and it does me well, and so it's not really. I want to keep feeding that. I want to be able to keep taking what I'm doing over there and put it directly into my music.
Yeah.
And my podcasting and all that. It's a direct financial source.
I think it's so fun to talk to another podcaster. Really, these are like genuine questions that I want to ask people, and I just can't because they're not podcasters, And it's definitely a different perspective for this next question. Like, if you're a fan, it's different from like if you're trying to separate the music from the person. It's a total different thing if you're a fan versus if you're an interviewer. How do you try to separate the music from the person when you're choosing interviews? Like you have, and I think I've done a good job too of having genuine people we like. But do you focus on that at all?
I think it's pretty tough, especially if you haven't met them before. To keep the music separate from the person, it's so hard to, because I don't know them on a personal level yet. I think now with all of the people that I have had up there, had on the lunch table, I think it is now way easier to separate the music from the person. Like we can just talk, we can chop it up, talk about the Super Bowl, talk about what we ate, you know what I'm saying, or what'd you do last weekend, or they're talking about their relationships or whatever. But I think it's tougher when you first meet them and when you first have them on, to like really try to do that, because you at the same time you're trying to highlight their artistry at the same time. But like we said, in those great interviews, and they're open to talking to you, like it's an extra added bonus, because they'll give you some of that. They'll give you something to where you're able to separate them. You're able to talk to them more as a person than an artist.
For sure. This is a huge debate. I think I don't even know what I would do, but if you had the opportunity to interview Tekashi 6ix9ine, would you do that? I think it's really interesting because I'm like the Breakfast Club like did a whole segment on that, and I'm like, well, yeah, you guys are such a huge influence that would almost be a negative impact if you interviewed him, especially after giving him all those warnings. Like every single interview, the person that interviewed him was like warning him like the entire time about the shit that was going to happen, and everything people said happened to him, But for like an upcoming podcast for like me or you, if Tekashi's management hit you up, what would you do?
I don't know, man. I mean, if the bread was right, I'll probably have him on. But I'll say this: that's like my podcasting is so separate from me being a musician. I wouldn't have him as a feature. Like I wouldn't do music with him. I feel like that would instantly kill my credibility. But for me to be able to bring him into a space and talk about what actually happened, you know what I mean? Like, how did this all go down? You know what I mean? There's so many stories that came out, and if he's willing to, if I talk to him before that he comes on the show, and I'm like, yo, I'm gonna ask you these things, man. Like, if we're not able to get this content, cool. Like, no pressure. But like, that's that would be the reason for you being up here. You know what I'm saying? So if like we can talk about those things, then I would probably do it.
Right. I feel like that'd be a full-on job though, to like interview him and make him personable and still keep your credibility even though you're at a low level.
Oh, you got to have a undisclosed location for sure.
Yes.
Because you might have some people trying to come after you while they're trying to come after him.
Yeah. You know what I started to think too, which is still something, I don't know if it's something I should get away from thinking or something that is just a normal reaction, but I feel like even if I had the opportunity to interview some huge artists like Dr. Dre, or no, you know who would be a perfect example? Kanye West. If I had the opportunity to interview him, that would actually be something I would have to think about, because the way he like acts on interviews, that'd be so hard to manage. Like, do you feel like from an actual perspective, like, do you think that you have the resources and the mindset at this point in time to have like a genuine interview with him? Or do you think you'd be like, oh shit, like if he like started like just spazzing out on an interview?
I think I could keep my composure with him. Sometimes you see him on like some Tonight shows or something like that, and you know they're so far removed from hip hop or even black culture that you can kind of tell that he picks and chooses questions where he wants to open up to them. I think as long as he is able to
Be sedated.
He could turn up. It's cool. Like I'm not gonna ask him anything that would make him turn up on me, or else I don't think I would.
Right.
But
You don't got to answer, Sway.
as long as Sway was so composed. That's very true. But he kept coming with the same question. He definitely kept pressing the same question. But you could do that when you're inside the culture. You know what I mean? If that was like Conan or something, or like,
but the thing is,
Jimmy Kimmel.
I've done research on that shit, and he literally has been on those shows multiple times. Like when people don't really think about it, they're like, oh wow, he's on Jimmy Kimmel.
He's a marketer though.
But he's been on those multiple times, and that's what I think the big thing about us interviewing up and coming artists. The fact is, when it comes down to it, this is not even like, there's no point in even lying about this. Like when you're doing a podcast, those artists are banking on the fact that you're going to make it big, and you're banking on the fact that they're going to make it big and get more views in that way. Like you want to help promote everyone, but at the end of the day, promoting it means you're going to continue to grow your influence.
Right. There's a cross benefit.
And those people that have him on a show, they aren't just some random wackos. They have been working with him for years and years, which is crazy when you actually do the research. I'm like, what? How is he on Jimmy Kimmel? I'm like, oh shit, he's been on that date, 2009, all the way back then, you know? And I think, I don't know, I think is there anything you try to stay away from when you're doing interviews? Like, what I try to stay away from in my podcast is pushing anyone's agenda, like, straight forward. Like, I like to promote people over their product or their music, but the reason I've focused more on Joe Rogan versus The Breakfast Club lately is because The Breakfast Club has done a good job of getting people outside of music, but at the end of the day, they're really, really promoting them. Like, it's a full-forced agenda they're pushing. So, what do you try to are you worried about anyone's agenda that you have on the podcast? Or
no one's ever really came with me with an agenda. They've all been like pretty excited to just come on and talk and be in a space where they're able to have a spotlight put on them. I mean, I'll try to dig as deep as possible. You know, there was only one artist who came up on the lunch table that was like, we had some topics that like they didn't really want to, that their management communicated with us that they didn't really want to talk about. And so if it was up to me, I would have asked those questions.
Yeah.
But you know, you don't want to piss nobody off or like burn a bridge or anything like that. So,
right.
But fortunately, yeah, no one's came up and has been demanding at all of like, I'm trying to do this, and this. But even the artist that came up and we had some restrictions with, it was really only one thing. Right. You know, so
his baby mama or some shit like that.
It was just some real, I'm not even gonna get into it, but it wasn't crazy. It wasn't like, why can't we? It was pretty understandable. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Right. Do you go into interviews thinking that they've listened to your podcast before, or do you try to like wipe that slate clean and don't even focus if they've heard your podcast at all?
Yeah, I've never really thought about whether they've heard the podcast before.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, they've all been familiar with it before they stepped on, and huge shout out to my girl Tessa Talks. Like she was probably like our first notable guest, and you know she's known him since they were young, and yeah, shout out to Tasia, and you know that fell right into like Paris, you know, like when she hit me back, she was like, "Oh, I seen that you had Tessa Talks on there." Like, I love her. I listen to her music too. Like, I would love to come up there.
Yes. Those are the best interviews.
Yeah.
It goes right into another interview after that.
Right. So yeah, it's all kind of built off of each other. You know, once a notable artist sees another notable artist on a platform, you know, I think it makes them way more open to coming to going there. It's like, maybe you see a hole in the wall food joint that you would have never picked, but then your homie takes you in there and you're like, oh, I fuck with this place.
Yeah. Like Guy Fieri did with Baka Bak.
Right.
Shit like that.
Yeah.
When you interview people, does it matter to you if it's one person you're interviewing or multiple, or is there something that you like more, like interviewing one person or multiple?
I usually like interviewing one person. It just makes my job easier.
Mm-hmm.
That's really it. Like, I mean, if the second person or however many, I've only had one interview that had two people on there, but
was the Louis one?
Yeah. So if they actually, I mean, he was pretty quiet, you know, so like, that didn't actually make my job any harder or anything, and I don't think he even really, I don't know. He seems like that's his best homie. He's there to support him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so he brings him with him everywhere he goes. It's like, where you go, where I go. And so
right. Rosie's a funny guy though. I kind of like that guy. He is quiet though, for sure.
Yeah, he's cool dude. He's cool dude. Like, all the interactions we've had with them is always been solid.
Right. Now, we're almost out of time. We're good though. So, do you see one music scene? Oh, how do I phrase this? Because what I like to do, I tell everyone this because that's just the type of person I am. I like to generalize things. So I like to say the Seattle music scene versus like Tacoma, Kent, Renton, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But do you see, you can even count Seattle as one of those options. Do you see one scene in the greater Seattle area getting more attention than another?
Seattle definitely gets the most,
and
I would say Tacoma follows behind.
Right.
But everyone wants to. I mean, it's just the main city of Washington, and so like I think naturally that's just what gets said by default. It's like, oh, what's happening in Seattle? It's not like what's happening in Mount Lake Terrace. You know what I mean? And so what's happening in Renton or something like that. So I think it's just like that by default. It's like, what's the main city, and I think people even, because like Mosey went through that. Like, he did the No Jumper interview and he was like, oh yeah, I'm from Seattle. Right. Everybody was on his head about it.
Yeah.
Like, nah, you're from up north. You know what I mean? And it's just like, for one, I don't even know why that matters. Because it seems like you would be wanting as much attention coming to your to the city as much as possible. But some people are real prideful about, you know, like like through and through Seattle dudes is like real prideful from being from Seattle, and through Tacoma dudes is real prideful about being from Tacoma. So it's like they don't, you know, they definitely are trying to put on for their cities. And, you know, fortunately enough, those are the two main cities in Washington where the music is coming out of. So it kind of works well. But I think Tacoma just falls right below Seattle.
For sure. That's true.
As far as like just notoriety.
Talented people though in there.
Yeah, sure. But it's gaining. You know, it's like you never really heard of like West Seattle.
Right.
Like some people like, oh yeah, this person out of West Seattle, this person out of South Seattle, you know, like White Center or something like that.
Right.
So like that's kind of cool to see. It's like you're kind of getting different sections of Seattle that are getting different pieces of notoriety.
What are your goals for your podcast and for the Seattle music scene?
My goals for the podcast, that's never gonna change. It's always gonna be to highlight the individuals whose music that I really like, or just the individuals that like are really doing something. Like entrepreneurs, like artists are very much entrepreneurs. Like, we're putting all of our faith into our product.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's never gonna change. Always bringing up people who have an impact on like basically what's going on around them. Yeah, and then just for music, it's gonna be we've talked about we've talked about the bag enough, so now it's time we jump in it.
Yes.
Got a lot of new music and features of stuff of people that I've been working with and putting together music videos and putting together all the content and putting the marketing scheme together. So as far as like for 2020 as a yearly focus, it's like now it's time to we walked up to the launch pad, now we got to get off it.
Yes, for sure. What is some advice they have for up and coming Seattle artists, creators, influencers?
Some advice. Wow. I didn't think I'd ever be asked that question. Cause I'm an artist myself. So it's like, I'm always learning. I'm learning something new every day. But I think the biggest thing is, and it's very vague, but it's like put out the best product as possible that you can. Super broad, but it's just like, you can go to Walmart and you can go get the Equate bottles, you know what I'm saying? Or you can go try to market like Dove or like, you know what I'm saying? Or like Old Spice or something like that. So it's like, I would say put a lot into your finished product, make it shiny, make it attractive.
Yes.
And what would be the other thing? Be consistent.
Yes.
That's something I'm working on myself. You got to stay in this day and age. You got to stay in front of people. You got to stay on people's minds to keep them interested. So staying consistent and put out the absolute best product that you can. Like, don't just shoot a $200 music video because that's what granted, if the song's hot, you could pop right off. But like, put a little more money into your craft. Try to make sure that it's going to come out proper.
For sure. What is the easiest way to reach you?
Easiest way to reach me, man, Instagram or the Lunch Table Podcast. Yeah, both on Instagram. Reach out to me, Caj Encee, CAJENCEE, or the Lunch Table Podcast. Feel free to reach out. We're all on the Lunch Table Podcast, so you got 4 different people that can get back to you.
And I'll put that in the bio for sure.
Yeah.
Well, this is DJ Blake and
Caj Encee.
There we go. Awesome. Nailed it. Full hour.
DJ Blake.